I'm a bit frustrated for this episode. I'm gonna come at this a little bit angry in the beginning, just because this is my third fucking time recording this exact podcast episode. Third time, and not because of tech issues or I've had like the camera just stop recording on me in the past. I've had the fucking the microphone and headphone like connection, the audio. Oh my god, the audio capture tool that I'm using. I've had that be unplugged, so it just completely stops recording from an audio side of things. So I've had a bunch of things happen where shit goes wrong, which is why I have to start over while recording an episode. But very rarely, I actually think this might be one of the only times that this has happened. Is it because I am just not with it? Like, I want to preface this fucking episode by saying that I give a lot of credit to news anchors. I don't know how they could look at these hard data points, numbers, just and then speak in such a freaking clear and concise way. Granted, they speak with that weird news anchor like voice or accent. I don't know why that's a thing, and I don't know how that evolved from like the radio accent, like the hey, see, like that whole thing. I don't know how the fuck you get modern day news anchor from that. But all that shit aside, props to the fucking people on all across all major, news platforms that can sit in front of a camera with a teleprompter and just read without stuttering like a freaking baboon. Because I'm out, or a buffoon, not baboon. I'm in all sorts of fucking shambles today. All right, I ain't eat. I'm very caffeinated. My producer Hannah, who's off screen right here to the right, she's looking at me like I'm a fucking idiot, even though she's being very supportive. So thank you for that. Today's episode, not light subject matter at all. We're talking about New York City. We're talking about if it's headed for the shitter. We're talking about crime, finances, business, etc., all that stuff. I guess the reason why I wanted to do the research and do this episode to begin with is because I've lived here for a year, and the entire time that I've been here, all I've seen on the news is how New York City is headed for the worst age it's ever going to go through. It's headed for the dark ages. It's going back into fucking media. All the media that I consume, all right? And it's not that I consume a lot of it. I just see it all over my feed and shit like that. And it's not because I search for those things. It's not algorithm, or I guess it is kind of technically, it has to be, but it's not like the majority of the stuff that I look for on social media is related to like news and events and keeping up with the times and shit like that as it pertains to New York. I'm just saying the stuff that I have seen makes it seem like, not the best right now. So I wanted to ask myself, or the question, is it actually headed for the dark ages? Is New York City actually going downhill? And the answer is actually a little bit, it's nuanced. It was pretty interesting, right? And before we go into like the main meat and potatoes, like the actual data points, I guess, and statistics that I found while doing research for this episode, I want to preface this by saying that the lens through which I looked at answering this question was how exactly, if we were to define if it's good or not, by what metrics would we compare New York City from its past or previous selves to now? What are we comparing, right? So the first thing that we're looking at is going to be crime, so safety. The second is going to be macroeconomics, so small businesses, shit like that. The third is going to be microeconomics, or that's what I'm kind of referring it to, or that's what I'm calling it, right? It's individual finances, quality of living, cost of living for the individual person that lives in New York City. What does that look like? Has it gotten better over the years? Has it gotten worse? All that stuff. So that's kind of like, that's me just setting the stage, setting the scene, right, for these findings and, me giving my take. Because I don't want to just go into this blindly without telling you how exactly I would, by what means am I saying if New York City has gotten better or has gotten worse. Jesus Christ, tongue twister here. So, we're talking about fucking safety. We're looking at the overall number of crimes, so the number of incidences citywide throughout the 5 boroughs. So now we're not looking at Westchester. We're not looking at, fucking north of West, whatever that area is called. Jesus, I'm from around there, so I should know that. We're not looking at the greater New York City area. We're just looking at the 5 boroughs. So within the 5 boroughs, right? Also, I got this data, like all this stuff for this little segment here of the podcast. All of these numbers were pulled from NYC.gov, so it's an official, obviously, .gov data source. I don't think that those numbers are that corrupt, right? And there's not really a narrative to push just by, editing anonymous, just raw statistics and figures on number of incidences. So we're not getting, any deeper than just what happened and the number of times it happened and what year. That's all we're looking at. Also, to preface, we're looking at the 7 major felonies because the way that the NYC.gov website had it kind of bucketed out is it was looking at crime through 4 different categories. The first one, and by the way, I'll link this website out in the description of the video so you could look at it for yourself if you're curious. But the first one is violation offenses, so like very small things that don't really matter. It's just like any violations, harassment, stuff like. Well, it matters. Obviously, it's a big deal if you do that. Don't do that. Don't be a shitty person. But you get what I'm saying. It's not like you're killing someone. So violation offenses is the first bucket of crime that they kind of siloed out. Then you have misdemeanor offenses, non-7 major felony offenses, and then the 7 major felony offenses. Also, in case you were wondering, because I know I didn't know what this was, the 7 major felony offenses are, in no particular order, murder/manslaughter, rape, robbery, felony assault, burglary, grand larceny, and grand larceny of motor vehicle. Those are the 7 major offenses. And that's actually what we're looking at today, because I'm not really too concerned. Like when I was looking at the numbers, it was interesting to see and, kind of, because it breaks out like what exactly all the crimes are that are bucketed into these categories. So it's interesting to see how NYC.gov split it up, right? But as far as how it impacts the conclusion I made on answering the question, is New York City headed for a shit show? Is it entering the dark age? I only care about, obviously, the 7 major offenses, because those are the big ones. That's what you should care about. So what does it look like? It's actually gotten better. That's the short story. So short summary of my findings here. From a crime perspective, New York City has gone better. The key question to ask here, or that I ask myself here, is gotten better relative to what, right? Because if you experience your lowest low, any fucking point above that is going to be technically better, even if it's just as long as it's above that lowest low. So we're looking at time, right? Year by year, year over year. It's gotten better from the year 2000, since the year 2000, which is when the data set starts. Prior to that, I would imagine that the numbers were even worse, because 90s era New York City, that decade, everybody knows that was real New York City. When motherfuckers out here who are like 40, 50 saying, you don't even know when I grew up, when they reference their New York City era, they're talking about the 80s and 90s, which is a whole different beast than what we have today. Unfortunately, I would have been very curious to know what those numbers look like. They were not included in this data pool, right? So from the year 2000 to 2023, overall, like just comparing from that start point to now, or I guess for you guys, it's from that start point to now, it's gotten lower. It's gone down. The crime rate's gone down. But that's not, when you look at it a little bit more, right, in detail, like when you zoom in and compare it in the last 5-10 years, that's where shit gets a little bit dicey. Lowest crime rate that we saw, lowest year according to these statistics, was the year 2020, so the pandemic. That obviously makes sense because people are going to be locked in their homes. They're not going to be interacting, right? And on top of that, it's just less people overall in the city because a lot of people fucking, they skipped town when they found out that they had to be locked in their shoebox or, closet of an apartment. So nobody wants to fucking chill out in a 10-foot by 10-foot box or room and, for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks at a time. So mad people left. That makes sense. That's why, at least my speculation, is that's why 2020 was the lowest year. While it's technically the lowest year, it was on trend, right? So it was not too different. The crime rate didn't vary much when you're looking at 2020 compared to the previous 3 years. So from 2017 to 2020, New York City seemed to have a pretty peaceful area, with the total number of 7 major felony offenses hovering around 96, 95,000. just in that general. This is the total number of the 7 major felony offenses. So it hovered around that mark for those 3-4 years. After the pandemic, so 2021, this is where shit got really interesting, right? 2021, you see a minor bump year over year. So compared to 2020 in the major felony offenses at 102,000 incidences. Obviously, I'm skipping out on the hundreds because we don't really need to be concerned with that. So it went up from 96,000 to 102. We're talking about 8,000 here or 6,000. Not the biggest jump. Okay, fine. After the year 2021 is where the year from 2021 to 2022 is where shit gets fucking crazy, and it jumps from 102,000 to 126,000. That's a big jump. That is scary. When I saw that, not gonna lie, I was like, oh fuck, so I'm not crazy. These media publications aren't lying to my face. Shit actually is getting worse. 2023, and I know you could say, oh, that was 2022. What about 2023? Not much fucking different. 126,000 again. Technically, slightly, I think, lower. Let me check right now. Actually, no, sorry. Higher. Slightly higher, but we're talking about like 200 incidences here. So that's like not really important. When we're talking about shit that's 126,000, 100 additional incidences over that, it's not really like night and day difference there. So 2023, 2022, comparable years, but compared to the last like 5 years, which is, you know, what I'm kind of thinking, using as a reference here in my head, because obviously I commuted to school for 4 years and I lived in the city for the past year and a half. So I'm really working. I personally only have the anecdotal evidence, or I guess like I only have 5 years worth of experiences with shit in New York City as an adult, which is what I'm using to reference when I'm saying if I feel like it's gotten better or worse. From a statistics standpoint, from a hard number standpoint, what I felt was happening actually turned out to be the case. And then it's actually also like what everyone is reporting. New York City has gotten worse post-pandemic. That's the main narrative that a lot of New Yorkers are saying, that the city saw its best, brightest days right before the pandemic. Shit was going amazing, like as far as, you know, crime rates and stuff like that. It's a very safe place. The city was good, right? And then after the pandemic, all those trials and tribulations that the city had to go through, and the country, the world together, after the pandemic, that's when you see the giant spike in the 7 major felony offenses. If you're wondering if the same can be said for the non-7 major felony offenses, it still holds true. When we're talking about just the non-7, the number, same thing. From 2000 to 2023, it does drop. But in the last 5 years, it's gone from a low, right, a dip, and now it's peaking back up. It's trending upwards. I guess only time will tell if 2024 has the same in store for us New Yorkers. More shit. Hopefully that's not the fucking case. So that's both the 7 and non-7 major felony offenses. Same kind of, I guess, trend here. Same conclusion can be drawn from looking at both of these data sets, which is shit is getting worse. Shit is worse than it was pre-pandemic, and we're out of the pandemic, right? COVID's pretty much like, I guess, socially, it's pretty much a thing of the past. Like, people want to fucking get all political and stuff about the vaccines. If I'm just being real here. From my day-to-day experience, I feel like COVID's kind of done. Like, if you do end up testing positive, it is not as serious of a thing as it was fucking 2-3 years ago, obviously. So with the pandemic being over, it's interesting how now are the crime levels, right? Like, people aren't locked up in their apartments. It's a little bit, we're farther away from the actual point of the pandemic. So you would think that the crime rate would kind of maybe stabilize or plateau out and then dip down. Hopefully that is what happens as the city recovers from the pandemic. Which is another thing that I actually looked into. But before I get into that, right, I want to talk about a specific case of crimes that I was very interested in looking at the numbers for, again, because of the fact that media was feeding this, I guess, common story, or, you know, common news that was being fed to me was that people were getting fucked up on any form of public transportation. So, like, I would be watching the news and I would see, again, not watching the news, I would just be scrolling on Instagram, and I follow a page called New York Shitty, which is a fucking hilarious page and a good page to get some news from Unbiased News if you want to follow that. It's a great page on Instagram. So, through my social feeds and stuff like that, I see so frequently, much more frequently than I'm comfortable with, headlines about fucking people getting messed up, either getting shot, stabbed, pushed onto the tracks, anything violent, like any unprovoked assaults or straight up just murder. All that stuff seems to be happening way more frequently nowadays, especially on the subway platforms and like in any public transportation. So I wanted to look at if this was actually up, right? Because the news could be saying that it's actually going up and stuff like that. But I wanted to look at from the numbers perspective, is it actually going up? So that's where shit is also depressing, because it is. Transit-related crimes or incidences. So transit crime is up compared to last year despite a drop in overall crime. So when we're looking at 2023, right, compared to 2024, early periods, right, with the data that we have as of, I think this was updated in, I want to say early April or March, the article that I'm pulling this from. Despite traffic looking like it's going to, or traffic, crime, the crime rate, despite the crime rate looking like it's going to be less, or the number of crime rates, incidences that have happened or will happen, despite it looking like it's going to be less than it was last year, the crime rate for transit crime is actually up by 53%. So that crime arrests in the subway system are up almost 53% when compared to last year. That is so fucking scary to me. That number is really scary, but it gets even worse when you read this next one, or when I read this next one. Of these subway arrests, right, which are up 53%, there is an increase of subway arrests related to gun arrests. So like you're arrested because you're in possession of a firearm illegally in New York City, something like that. That number has gone up by 83.3%. So you're probably thinking, like I was when I read that everybody is fucking strapped in New York City. Where are all these people getting these firearms from? When I read that, my brain instantly says that now all these motherfuckers walking around, just common people, everyday people that you pass in the subway, everyone is strapped with some sort of fucking toolie. So but that's just for that first part, right? This is where you actually have to, the numbers matter, not just the percentages. That it only went up 83.3% because the number increased from 12 arrests. I don't even know mathematically how this makes sense. It probably does proof out, but whatever. From 12 gun-related arrests last year to 22 this year, given the same amount of time or same periods, right? So like we're looking at January to April of 2024 versus January to April of 2023. That's what this data set is looking at, right? And it says an increase of 83.3%, but it's really in actuality just a jump of 10 more arrests, which it's not that fucking much, right? Like you pass 10 people, I passed 10 people on the fucking way to the entrance to this building, let alone walking around in New York City. So no reason to be panicked there. Not good that there are the 53% jump in subway arrests. That is a legitimate number. We're talking about thousands of arrests, right? So the total number from January to April of 2023 is up 53% for this year. So that is a legitimate statistic. That 83.3% for the gun arrests, that's a little bit misleading. Obviously, the numbers don't lie. That is a real number, but it's a little bit misleading just because it's not statistically significant. There aren't enough arrests to actually go and say comfortably that all these motherfuckers are carrying guns out here, because it's only 22 people that have been arrested. But, that still does show, the 53% still does show that these subways now are getting more dangerous than they were last year. And they are continuing to get more dangerous, which is the really shitty part. And the reason why I really cared about like crime as it pertains to the subway is because it's one thing if you're kind of involved in criminal activities. Like if you live, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's one thing if you fucking live a lifestyle that puts you in situations where you're probably more likely to be involved in a crime, right? And those impact the numbers. There's a lot of people obviously, that lead those lifestyles that make up a large percentage of those crime incidences that were reported in that article from NYC.gov. But the reason I cared about the subway crimes was because the subway is supposed to be just a common space where like people of the public can use it, obviously for their own benefit, to travel, to traverse throughout the city to see this great city for yourself. And that's something that's really important, right? When I asked this question to myself, I was kind of asking it because I was trying to better understand the reality of living in this city long term, right? Because I'm 25, I'm trying to figure out the fucking game of life, right? A big part of that is where I'm going to live and, where I'm going to spend most of my time, right? And New York City right now, looking a little rough, especially from like the crime standpoint. And I care about the subway because I'm not going to live in New York and not take the fucking subway. It's mad expensive to Uber out here. And if I can't take the subway because there's an increase in, crimes and the likelihood of me being involved in a crime just by going to take the fucking A train, if that increases exponentially, I think I'm good. Like, I think that's a sign to dip the hell out of the city. So that's why I wanted to look into that specifically. So that's safety. We're talking about crime, safety. That's over and done with. It's gone up. That's the conclusion we've made. It's not as safe as it was pre-pandemic. Levels are about like 2022 to 2023, it's kind of plateauing out. It's not jumping up as large of a jump as you saw from 2021 to 2022 or from 2020 to 2021 even. So that's a good thing. It is slowing down the rate of increase, but it still is increasing, even if it's just a little bit. And it's also just way up when you compare to like 4 or 5 years ago. Now on to the next, avenue of analysis is a good way to put it. We're looking at macroeconomics. So for this one, I was concerned with, like, I was thinking about, like, if I'm living somewhere, right? If I'm having fun in the city, you want a lot of restaurants. Like, what determines the vibe and like what determines if a city is or isn't like feeling alive? Things feel dead because there's not a lot of activity. There's not a lot of motion, energy, stuff like that. Vibes of a city feel up and alive and energetic when there's a lot of small businesses, bars, restaurants, clubs, shit for people to do. And then that ends up, like making the impression on you that you're like, oh my God, this is such a happening place to be. It's so fun to be here, all that stuff. So I was looking at small businesses, right? So that could be any individually owned or operated business. All of the numbers that I'm about to say, they come from the, where is this here? Oh, the the NYC EDC. Okay, so that's the New York City Economic Development Corporation. It's a nonprofit company based out of New York City. So that's where I'm pulling this business data from. They put together like a presentation. The data is a little bit old. I think it only accounts for up until 2022. So it doesn't take into account obviously this year or last year. But I still think that's important to look at, obviously, because we had the year of 2020, the fucking pandemic. So I wanted to see what things looked like pre and post pandemic. So obviously pre-pandemic things were going well from what I see here, right? From what I saw when I was reading this thing. Things were going well. And then once the pandemic hit, obviously a lot of business closures happened for obvious reasons. People weren't able to go out and spend their fucking money, let alone a lot of people actually didn't even have money coming in because they lost their job. But that's a whole other thing, whatever. So from a small business standpoint, this is actually where I felt relief reading this. I thought that it would say that a lot of small business closures have happened in the last, or since not last year, but like 2022. So 2 years ago. I thought it was going to say that it looks like the rate of closures are actually going down. But here's a little bit of like a silver lining for all this depressing shit that I've been saying for the last fucking 24 minutes. It's actually going up and is almost recovered to near pre-pandemic levels. So as of 2022, it probably is already recovered actually, because there's been a whole year of, development that could have been made on this. But from this report, right, it is showing that the number of small businesses that are registered went up to roughly 96% of what it was prior to the pandemic, if that makes sense. I don't think I put that the most eloquently, but basically the thing that you should be taking away from that is that a lot of shit closed down during the pandemic, but New York City has actually made a huge fucking comeback, and actually is up to almost just about probably is what it was before the pandemic as far as small businesses, right? So that's fucking lit. Just because, I'm looking at my notes here. That last statistic that I read off, that 96%, like roughly to 96% of it, what it was before the pandemic, that was not a statistic from the New York City Economic Development Corporation, that nonprofit that I was talking about. That's not from that. It's actually from the USSBA, so the U.S. Small Business Administration. So even more comforting to hear that, because those are legitimate fucking numbers there. So great news. So that's the macroeconomics of it all. The microeconomics now we're looking at quality of life, all that stuff. When you look at all of the U.S. rankings by city for most expensive cities to live in, New York, I mean, just people know this about New York. It's like New York and LA are always the cities that people toss out there when we're talking about like most expensive to live in. I did a bunch of research on this, and this is a little bit more tricky because there's not exactly like concrete numbers to pull from. There's like a lot of articles that say different things. But point is, on all those articles, whether it was number 1 or number 2 or number 5, whatever the placement was, it was still in the top 10 most expensive places to live in the fucking States, which was New York City. Not sure if that is only taking into account Manhattan or if it's actually looking into like all the 5 boroughs, just because if it was, then obviously the, I guess, median cost of living would go down because obviously poor people can't afford to live in Manhattan, unfortunately. So that would be a good thing to know. It wasn't noted, unfortunately, but when we're looking at the microeconomics of it all, New York City is ranked amongst the most expensive cities to live in the U.S. Now, how does this look when we're looking at like average earnings per household or per person, and then the average cost of living? So this is where shit gets, again, depressing. This statistic is brought to you by United Way of New York City. So it comes from them, but it was reported on by ABC. So United Way of NYC via ABC. That's where this statistic comes from. It shows that the cost of living have increased by 131%, while average earnings have increased by only 71%. So the rate of the increase of cost of living is increasing faster than the rate of average yearly income per household. So basically it's getting more expensive to live, and people in general aren't making more money fast enough to keep up with the rate of the increase of cost of living. Depressing again. So that basically means if you're not a top earner, it's pretty fucked living in the city. I mean, I think that's well known. This is one of the best cities, still is one of the best cities, despite the rise in crime. If you're rich, that's the important distinguishment here. If you got fucking money, like bags, oogles of money that you could just without any like any feeling of guilt, a shred of guilt or a shred of like financial preservation, if you're able to just go out and order Uber everywhere, order DoorDash, go out to eat, yada, 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 do every fucking thing you could do, pay $12, $15 for a coffee. If you could do all that stuff without feeling a shred of guilt or like a shred of financial instability, then you're chilling. This is one of the best, if not the best city to live in the world, because you're fucking rich. You could afford things, so many more things in this city. You could do so many more things that you can't do anywhere else. But as it pertains to the average New Yorker, shit's not looking good, even from the standpoint of just finances, right? Rent is also up. The median rent increased from, I think, like $1,500 to $1,600 or something like that, citywide, year over year. That was another statistic I saw, so that's pretty fucking scary. So I guess after spending the last 30 minutes going over all the data points, now the conclusion is, this is what I've come to. I don't think, for myself, right, that New York City is necessarily the best place to live right now. Just because economically, it's a really hard place to make it. That's why they say if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. But I'm fine with that. The main thing that really scares me is the safety of it all. I don't want to feel scared leaving my apartment, which is not the case right now where it's like if I walk out just to the corner store, I'm fearful of my life. But I am anxious. There is like a constant, almost like hum of anxiety whenever I leave my apartment. Reason being is that comes from constantly being on the lookout for any fucking threat that can happen out of nowhere, right? Which is a reality. A lot of, you could hear me say that and think that I'm just an overthinker. I'm just paranoid. You should just take it easy. Just go out, enjoy, have a good time. Like, you don't have to have your guard up all the time. Obviously, you're not going to, most people wouldn't, tell someone else to not have awareness of their surroundings. But to have it so high where it's making you anxious, that's a bad thing. A lot of people would just say, why are you even letting yourself get worked up to that point to begin with? Reason being, right, the reason why I'm so anxious when I leave my fucking house is not necessarily because, like, I think I'm going to get involved in a crime where, like, okay, here's what I'm trying to say. It's not the increase in just crime that bothers me. It's the increase of unprovoked crime that really bothers me. Like, that's why I was looking into, like, the subway stuff, because it's one thing if the crime rates go up. I mean, if it goes up a lot, that's a fucking problem. But if it's one thing if it goes up a little bit, you most likely are not going to be involved in an area or a situation, or you're not going to be involved with people where you're going to end up robbing a place, or you're going to be in a place that gets robbed, right? At least I wouldn't be. But I am concerned with the increase of crimes when it comes to just people randomly assaulting other people. Like, that's hard to fucking avoid. Like, if I have to use the subway, again, like I said before, to get from point A to point B, whether it be work, going out to, see a Broadway show, going to catch a fucking Yankee game, name one of a million, classic things to do in New York City. Out of all those million things, if I have to get on the subway, just me putting myself in the subway is now synonymous with me putting myself in harm's way. Basically, right? Because all these people are fucking attacking other people unprovoked. It's one thing if you're acting like an asshole, or if you put yourself in kind of like a sticky situation. You're like, oh, fuck it. Let's stay out really late tonight and go to a sketchy part of town. And then while we're out there, wear really, really like lavish clothing that would attract a lot of attention. Okay, obviously, then you're putting yourself in a place where the likelihood of you getting involved in a crime increases. I get that. Fine. It's the thing that, like, when I go out, I always got to have my guard up, and not just for me, for anyone I'm with, right? Because if I'm with my friends, I don't want somebody to just run up behind them when they're not fucking looking and they get fucking sucker punched. That's a common thing. I don't want Hannah to have to worry about, God forbid, if I'm not next to her, if she's walking alone, to have to worry about getting fucking assaulted, which actually almost did happen. She's actually here, so hopefully she'll chime in on this. But just from anecdotal evidence or anecdotal experiences, right? I don't know if I'm using that word correctly, but whatever. Just from those like personal experiences, it's been a little dicey. Hannah, the other day, there's like been a trend in crime. I don't know if there's like a fucking social media app that I'm not on where there's like trends that happen amongst criminals, but it's like a thing now where people will just randomly punch women, right? Women who are on phones. You can't fucking talk on a phone in New York City, of all places. The place that's known in the U.S. as the most fucking hustle and bustle, never fucking sleeps, always on the grind, finances, cutting deals, business, yada, yada, all that shit. That's kind of the vibe of New York. Business people need to be on their phones. Every day people need to be on their phones. You can't even be on the phone now in New York City without, feeling like, oh shit, what if I end up being like that girl that the news showed like literally yesterday of, I'm just walking down the street and I get fucking punched. That literally happened to Hannah. Hannah was walking down the street. She didn't get punched, thank God. But she was walking down the street, and unprovoked, a random man who was like walking towards her seemed to be fine. Everything was chilling. And then all of a sudden, like as they get closer and as they're passing by each other, Hannah out of her peripheral sees that the guy goes like this. Did he scream? when he cocked back his arm, or did he scream afterwards once you kind of like recoiled and then ran off? Good survival instincts, by the way. So just to finish the story before we get on into the little nitty-gritty details while she tries to remember what exactly happened. What I do know what happened is that she was walking. When the guy got close to her, he did something that freaked her out. Like he went like this or something. And then Hannah, by instincts, thank God she had these instincts, she just kind of like shielded her face. So she was on the phone or something. She shielded her face, didn't even look at the guy, just ran. Like immediately. She didn't try to fucking, yo, what, have any conversation. No, you can't argue with crazy. She fucking tucked, slipped a punch, whatever you got to do. She's out here doing boxing moves and then sprinted off in the fucking opposite direction away from the guy. Those are good survival instincts. So did he say something to you before he like pump faked you or tried to hit you? Or was it after?
I think it,
Can you turn this way so the mic could pick you up?
I think he said something. It might have been like, I can't tell if it was like right after, or if it was like right before.
Okay, so that was of no help.
I think it was after, and he was like, "What the fuck are you on your phone?" It was like he was like mumbling.
Okay, so she said, I don't know if hopefully the microphone picked that up, but she said she was walking. The guy, all right, just to get this perfectly clear, because she told me someone tried to punch me. This is no knock against Hannah. She's not like the most athletic or like quick reaction person like in the world, right? I'm not saying I am. I'm just saying she is not. So if she was walking by and somebody actually was genuinely trying to fucking punch her in the face, I don't know if she, honestly, I don't know if anyone could just, if you're just walking and on the phone without like scoping out the guy first, if you're just walking, not expecting anything, I don't know if anyone is fast enough to react to a random sucker punch from the side, let alone in front of you, without getting hit. So that's kind of why I feel like the guy was just like pump faking you. He wasn't actually trying to like fucking swing at you. But just the fact that he did that is ridiculous. Like, had I been with you and I hopefully it would have deterred him. But had he done that and I was with you, I would have been like, yo, what the fuck? Like, gotten scared. Because that's not a normal thing. You don't pump fake like strangers.
Yeah. No,
So just because he actually potentially wasn't trying to hit her or didn't make contact doesn't make that incident any less okay.
I do feel that if I didn't duck,
He would have hit you?
Yeah.
She said if she didn't duck, she does think that if she didn't duck, she would have gotten fucking smacked. So, like, just that is crazy. And that's like a very minor case. There's been other cases of like crazy people on the subway that have made her feel uncomfortable. Like women in general in the fucking city. I don't know how, like, if you're dating a girl from New York City, like from New York City, or someone who's a girl who's lived in New York City, just know that girl is already by default not your normal girl. I think it's unfortunate that women have to do this, but I feel like the women that live in New York City are a little bit sharper, have their wits about them a little bit more, and are a little bit more like cautious and I guess analyzing. Like their self-preservation instincts are higher. They're elevated just because they have to deal with the bullshit that comes along with living in the 5 boroughs. So that is kind of the conclusion I've made. It's not really the best time to live here. Like for me personally, right? You do whatever the fuck, if you do live in the city, you do with this information what you will. I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life here. I'm just saying after doing this research, because I was sick to the stomach, fucking anxious, like, is New York City like really that bad as people say? Also, another thing that did not help with that was the downloading, the installation of the fucking Citizens app on my phone. I've talked about this on another podcast episode before, but that's really, I would say that was the catalyst in like me getting as anxious as I've been when it comes to my safety in New York City. For obvious reasons, like the fucking app is literally designed so that you are aware of all of the fucking crime, minor or major, that occurs in your area, whatever, settings you have. That shit messed me up it has had me messed up since the day I installed it. All right. It's really, really fucked with my psyche. I think like not in a permanent way, just like while I'm living here, it's made me like more nervous. And one of the ones, like one of the crimes that it reported that really fucked me up. It's like I remember laughing because I'm just like, there's no way this is like the first fucking notification I get. The very first notification, like banner notification I got on my phone from the Citizens app was zero point 0.3 miles away. I'm not going to say where because then that obviously kind of says like exactly within Brooklyn where I live, but it said zero point 0.3 miles away from where I live, a man was shot in the chest. Okay, so imagine I download the Citizens app. I'm like, oh, okay, it's good to know if there's any like if there's like a fucking active shooter. It's good to know like you get a notification on your phone that says stay away from this area, right? Cool. The first notification after I installed that app, the night that I installed it, the first banner notification I got was that a dude was shot in the fucking chest and was killed. He died 0.3 miles away. 0.3 miles is a 7-minute walk. So 7 minutes at a leisurely 2.5 miles per fucking hour, I think, or around there, whatever. I could have, it is the distance, the amount of time it would have taken for me to get from where I am to where someone was murdered, like a crime scene. That's scary because like what led up to the dude getting shot? Like, is this a bad area? I don't think the area where I live is a bad area. But if it's not a bad area and dudes are getting shot in the chest, something about the chest really fucked me up. Because they could have just left it at shot, like man shot or man shot and killed, whatever. But the fact that they specified chest was, it was just extra level of disturbing. I don't know why. It just really fucked with me. So that's the first notification I get on the Citizens app. And from then on, it's been kind of a downward spiral. Like it's never gotten better. The only thing that I could remember two things that the Citizens app notified me of that I was like, oh, thank God, like no one fucking died or is in the hospital or no one got like their shit stolen or any like serious scary crime was protests being reported. Like a massive march was reported. It came up on the Citizens app. I don't know why Citizens app decided that that's something that they need to report on, but I'm glad they did, whatever, near my house. So that was cool. All right, fine. Fucking peacefully protest, do your thing. Doesn't bother me. And then the second one, the only other notification from that app that I've gotten that was like good or like not bad was that the solar eclipse was happening. That fucking solar eclipse that happened like 2 weeks ago. I don't know why, again, that the Citizens app is reporting that the fucking moon is blocking out the sun. I don't know why that is something that they think is necessary to report on a crime app. But whatever. I digress. So point is, after looking at all these goddamn statistics, after installing the Citizens app and just getting the absolute shit scared out of me, I think I've come to the conclusion that New York City, as far as my personal experience with it, it's seen better days. It feels just not as safe when I walk around outside. And like traverse throughout the city. It feels like, despite me having all this love for New York City, I don't know if it's necessarily a place where I want to live like long term, just because, first of all, just because I've gotten more paranoid that shit's just going to like fall apart at any second. And this is probably one of the worst fucking places to be if there were to like just randomly happen, like an apocalypse or nukes are being launched. New York City is probably one of, if not the worst cities or places to be in the fucking world, just because there's so many people. Everyone's packed in here like a freaking can of sardines. That the likelihood of you making it out, being able to escape, survive whatever apocalyptic event is occurring in whatever hypothetical situation, the likelihood of you making it to the other side is low. That is kind of, that in combination, I'm not a doomsday prepper, but...
Your mom said the thing that makes her paranoid about living in like New York City is like your gridlock. So
okay.
Like, if anything were to go down, you're fucked.
Yeah, so another thing is, I don't know if the mic picked that up, but Hannah's saying that my mom, I guess because they had a conversation, my mom said the same thing where it's like there's an anxiety of if things fall apart, this is the worst place to be because everything's gridlocked. What?
I am really curious though if like we're just paranoid or if like everyone else feels this way because it's like so many people still
I don't think it's. Okay, so here I don't know if the camera or the microphone picked that up, but Hannah asked if it's just us who feel this way or if it's everyone else. I think like this is what I think on that. It gets interesting because I feel like I don't think that thought that we have is uncommon. I think a lot of people think that like, oh shit, New York City would be the worst place to be. Like, what would happen if we were if
But
like
no
nukes?
one thinks, no one's actually gonna like, if they don't care enough, I think, or they don't think it's gonna happen enough to like actually move out for it.
So this is what I think about it, right? This is what I was gonna say. I think people just have different levels of sensitivity when it comes to that type of stuff. Like some people are really dismissive of any potential world ending or like societal collapse event. Some people are really they just dismiss it. Like they're like, oh no, that's what the fuck? Like a nuke being launched, that's never gonna happen, or like anything like that. They're some people are just very dismissive over that.
A nuke being launched, like,
No, I'm not talking about a nuke being launched specifically. I'm saying like just in general, some people are very dismissive over like those catastrophic events. Like a lot of people just say like, "Oh yeah, no, that would never happen." Do you understand? So a lot of people just say that. And then there's other people who recognize that is like that can happen, but their sensitivity to it, like the amount of bother, like the amount that potential outcome bothers them is just way lower. Like for me, even if the risk is low, right? Just the fact that the risk is low, but it could still happen, that bothers me enough that I don't feel comfortable like living here. Especially when you look at it from like the lens of how all this ties into like international politics, international news, and like everything that's been like all the events that have been happening worldwide with Ukraine, now with the stuff in the news about Israel and the US and Iran, like all of these tensions, all these breaking points, like there's so many fucking ways in which the world could just end. And we're so aware of it now that I feel like all that in combination with one another has kind of impacted me in a way where I'm like, I don't really know if like this is the place I want to be. Because it's not necessarily, I think all that stuff's obviously been there. War and everything has always been there, but the people, the everyday people didn't necessarily have so much access to this news. Like back in the fucking day, you know, cities, I don't think anyone who lived in New York City, even after, you know what, that's bullshit because the Cold War, people in the Cold War, I was going to say like that they would be nervous of a nuke dropping, but I'm just going to immediately fucking take that back because motherfuckers in the Cold War were practicing getting under desks and shit in the event of a nuke being dropped, which I don't even know what getting under a desk or practicing like any of those survival techniques would matter if you're getting a fucking atomic bomb dropped on your head. I don't know what any of that shit would do. I don't think hiding under an elementary school desk with the little fucking chair that's welded on via metal bar, you hiding under that bastard is going to prevent you from getting absolutely vaporized when a fucking hydrogen bomb gets dropped on your forehead. So I'm going to just completely retract that statement that I was going to make, but I will say that I think that the amount of news that is pumped into our face every single day, as specifically bad news, unfortunately, I'm not more strong-minded or strong-willed where it doesn't impact me. Unfortunately, it really has kind of like scared the shit out of me, and unfortunately, it's impacted me in the way where when I look at these statistics met with my already paranoia from like, you know, all that shit that we just talked about, catastrophic events, the two of those meeting, I think that is really what is informing the opinion of like, ooh, seen better days. I'm kind of trying to move out. That's kind of what has led to that opinion. That being said, still one of the best cities in the world. I don't give a fuck. I'll say that right now. Still better than Boston. Still better than Philly. Still better than LA. I'm coming for all of the fucking smoke right now. When I say that, by the way, it's obviously jokes, but also from like, in all seriousness, from a reputation, like there is no city that's as historic as New York City. That's really what I mean when I say that this is the best city in the world. There's nothing beats like the fucking legacy and like the reputation that this city has, right? And even though it is not pleasurable to live here, and it's like, I shouldn't say not pleasurable. There are unpleasant things about living here. And that it's getting worse. Like over the past 5 years, it's gotten worse. Even though that's the case, I still love this city and I know that this city is going to bounce back because New York has been through, obviously, way worse shit than it's been through right now. And it always bounces back. It's like Captain America. It literally never fucking quits. Ever. You hit New York City, and I'm not trying to make light of this. You hit New York City with a literal terrorist attack, and it just gets back up on its feet and says, I could do this all day. Then we get hit with a fucking pandemic. Or actually after that, the recession, right, of 2009. I could get back from that. I got that easy. Then the pandemic, I could get back from that. I got that easy. And then now the crime rates and stuff like that. So even all that being said, I still adore and love this city and the people that live here. There's nothing quite like the rude, fucking mean, gritty New Yorker that is still somehow, even though he says it like a dick, nice to you and helpful and getting you around. Like you might ask a New Yorker, like, shit, I'm lost. I'm out of town. How do I get from point A to point B? They might answer you in a very impatient way, but they're still helping you out. So that's all I got to say. It's a 51-minute little solo dolo episode for y'all. I don't know if it was necessarily the best one. I tried it. I put on my best fucking Walter Cronkite here and trying to be a goddamn news anchor and reporting on statistics and shit. Look at me. ABC, CBS, Fox News. I'll take a opening at any one of your companies. Just pay me the big bucks. Sponsor this show. I'm kidding. But all that being said, it's been a good episode. Hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully you guys aren't scared like I am. Shitless every single day leaving the apartment. Hopefully that's not you. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that social media bullshit. Until next time, cue the outro music. Until next time, y'all. Deuces. I'll catch you on the next one. Look at us, 200 subscribers. Here we go. Gotta just keep pumping this thing out. All right. Deuces, y'all.